Welcome, welcome. Oh boy, we got a lot of people joining us. Welcome. We'll give everybody a few minutes just to get in. Okay, great. Looks like we're getting started here, guys. It looks like there's lots of people still coming in. And if we could just give it one more minute and we'll get started. All right, so welcome everybody to our nurse faculty webinar series. I am just like bursting with joy and gratefulness for our panelists and our community of almost 2,000 faculty from all over. I know I've seen members from Australia and Africa and just anywhere in the US. So very exciting to have all of our, just like all of us come together during a time when we needed it the most. So I just want to take a quick moment of silence to honor our colleagues who are on the front lines, which may include some of us. So I just want to take a moment for that to acknowledge their work right now. Okay, so yes, certainly this work is hard work, going to online and being able to help each other navigate has been priceless. I will never forget the first, day when I was told, okay, we're all going online. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So we created this little Facebook group and now here we are and super grateful. So with that being said, thank you for joining us today, Thursday, April 30th, 4 p.m. Central. We are having a webinar series and we're kicking it off with some of our brightest colleagues, our colleagues who are working side by side with us, going to share some really awesome tools that they're using. And today is the escape room. So we're going to learn all about that today. And if I could just go over a little housekeeping, okay? So today is the first webinar series. This will be recorded. You will be able to access the PowerPoint as well as the recording following the presentation. So that will be available. I know we had so many people messaging about that. The second thing is questions. If you want to enter them into the chat room, I'll be moderating questions and we'll do those all at the end of the presentation. So please be sure to go ahead and type any questions, or if you wanted to wait towards the end and type them on in, we'll make sure that we answer those questions. And also I'm going to head over to our Facebook group because I know people were putting questions there. We want to make sure everybody gets those answered. And then the last thing is, don't forget to check out the next events that we have coming up. Also posted, we have Picmonic next week. So I think that's it. Without further ado, I will hand it over to our panelists. Thank you so much. Again, this is Amber Gonzalez-Grant. Oh, and special thank you to WCTC, I should mention, that's my employer hosting this event. So, all right, next slide, please.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer Reyes, and I'm one of the escape room panelists today, along with Lauren Dawson, Laura Lewicki, and Kimberly Tideman. Next slide, please. So today we're talking about escape rooms, which is kind of a really fun virtual tool, especially as we learn to navigate those online waters and for courses that were not maybe previously housed online at all. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll identify what an escape room is. We've created a list of tools that you may need to create an escape room, and verbalize some of the basic rules and helpful hints and tricks when you're actually trying to create that escape room, because it can be tedious. We'll then talk about different ways in which you can utilize escape rooms, specifically in nursing education, and we'll talk about how to evaluate your students who participate in those rooms based on how you use them. And then finally, we have a list of resources that you can just refer to when attempting to create your own escape room. So next slide, please. But first, we're gonna just meet a little bit, meet the presenters briefly. So next slide.
All right, that's me. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Dawson, and I'm happy to be here with you guys this afternoon, sharing knowledge and resources on these escape rooms. I'm coming to you guys from Maryland, where I work as an assistant professor of nursing at Cecil College. I have listed on the slide a little bit about me regarding my clinical background, what I'm teaching, what I have taught, and my nursing interests of the active learning strategies and student success is really what got me here today, talking about these escape rooms. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Lewicki, and I'm from Tampa, Florida, Assistant Professor of Nursing at Hillsborough Community College. I'm currently teaching in a couple of simulation-based courses, so as many of you have faced and talked about, it was a real challenge taking things that you're used to being online and taking them into a virtual environment. My clinical experience is primarily critical care. I've taught in about every level of nursing except for OB-PEDS and mental health. I'm interested in simulation and active learning strategies, and what prompts that is an interest in student success. And I'm excited that you guys are here.
All right, and that's me again. I'm Jennifer Reyes, and I'm also a nursing instructor at Hillsborough Community College. So typically what happens is Laura is forced to do things with me because I ask her to, but, and I teach in all the levels as well with her. And I have taught PEDS and OB in mental health because I'm one of those nurses that, you know, my previous experience, I just jumped around and, you know, maybe from a resume standpoint, scared some nurse managers, but I was always just, what can I do and how can I learn? And it was always my goal to come back and be an educator and break it down for students. So I'm very interested in active learning strategies, but I've also found a passion for faculty development as well. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I enjoy not only learning new things, but then teaching everybody that I can about these fun new tricks. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Kim Tiedman, and I work at Minot State University, and I'm finishing up my 4th year of teaching, and I love it. It's definitely become a passion of mine, along with just nursing in general. I'm currently teaching this semester 2 students, which it's their first experience with medical surgical nursing. So it was kind of a disappointment for them to transition to the online. So I found this strategy to be something different and something entertaining, but yet useful to learn for my students, and they've enjoyed it. Clinical experience, I've got med-surg experience, some critical care, and then I even still work a little bit in the chronic pain clinic. And I love finding new ways to teach things to try to keep my class fresh and new, because it's in 3-hour blocks, which is a long time for them to sit still. So I love the active learning environment and doing a flipped classroom. So welcome for everybody coming. Thanks. Next slide. So I'm going to first talk about what an escape room is. So escape rooms have been around for a little while, and if some people may be familiar with them and others not, but there are a couple different types. First of all, an escape room, just to define it, is an active learning strategy. It's hands-on for the physical ones. You can work in individuals or groups with clues, and the whole goal is to unlock a puzzle. The challenge is to complete those tasks. Usually there's a clock running, so you're trying to do it within a certain amount of time in order to escape from room to room. These escape rooms provide entertainment, and they allow people to use their senses and to really think about things in order to solve these puzzles and these riddles. And so they're actually learning the whole time. There's a couple different types. There's the physical type where you actually go to a facility and they've got rooms, they've got props, and this is where you do the puzzles and get clues in order to unlock that room and move on. And so those are ones that are usually group activities, and you just continue until time runs out or until you escape through the final room and they have a little celebration for you at the end. Now, the other type of escape room is the virtual ones. That's kind of what we're discussing today for all of you. And the virtual ones are completed with assistance of technology, such as the computers.
Kim, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if your mic is rubbing on something, but there's a lot of feedback. It's
oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Let's see. So the virtual ones are ones that are done online, and you work through the puzzles, which there's a million different things you can do for those puzzles in order to enter a correct code in order to move on to the next room. So they have to answer those puzzles, and they're learning about nursing strategies, nursing information the whole time. Both types of these escape rooms, you need the correct code that comes from the clues or those pieces of the puzzle that you're solving for the mystery in order to move on. And most of all, these escape rooms are learning. And so the students have really liked the learning process. It's different than PowerPoints. It's different than some of the virtual simulations, which are good too, but just something different for them. I found a lot of students like the gaming aspect. It adds that element of fun, which I really full-heartedly believe that students need to have fun while they're learning. It just makes it a little bit easier. And especially now at this time that we are in this online environment that's strange for a lot of students and for faculty as well. It's helping relieve some of that stress for those nursing students and for the instructors to have a little bit of fun with this. Thank you. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about some of the tools that are needed to create an escape room. And so I'll touch on a little bit of in-person and the virtual escape rooms because the tools are a little bit different. Most of us, like myself, I can't even get on campus at this time. So I understand it's a little bit different for everyone at this time, but a live escape room isn't an option for me at this time. So I'll start with the virtual and then finish up a little bit with the in-person. So if you look on the slide with the virtual escape room, I always start my content with a fun name or phrase to go along with it. This is optional. However, it gives me a lot of encouragement and excitement that this activity is going to be really great. And I hope that my students will share that as well. And so the next thing you're going to need, obviously, is a device and internet access. These are all key players, and any device is going to work. So whether you have an iPad or a Chromebook or PC, they're all going to work just fine. Now on your device, you want to, I recommend creating a folder for each room that you have. So this is where you're going to house all of your resources, and as far as the pictures that you found, audio, if you have articles, you want to keep everything all together. For me, I've used, these tools have been helpful, PowerPoint and Word. I've used both of those as a means to create a chart, add pictures, and then I've also used the snipping tool. The snipping tool is essentially makes a screenshot. And so I will screenshot what I've created in Word or PowerPoint and save that as an image and upload that into my escape room. So now that you have the internet, your device in place, you're going to need a platform to facilitate the virtual rooms. I have a couple that I've personally used, and I'll tell you just a little bit about them, advantages and disadvantages. Google Forms I have listed here. This is probably going to be your most user-friendly platform. The only thing that you need is a Gmail account, which is free. And in that platform, you can list tons of questions, images, video, audio, and then you can lock the room. And so the student needs to answer the question correctly to proceed to the next room. A disadvantage that I've found with it is getting student hints, and if they get stuck on a room, I mean, I know if you guys have tried to access it and you're like, I can't get it, there's no means to, like, if I can't get the room for 5 tries, then, you know, what are the hints? So there's also Microsoft Note. This is a program, if you're not familiar with it, Microsoft, it's like a digital notebook that students can use. And students can create notes, and it helps them with organization. However, it also allows for locking pages, and so we can use that as an escape room. This platform is a little bit more complex to navigate. The creator of the room is going to need a Microsoft 365 account, which usually isn't a problem. I get my subscription through my employer. But what's really cool about this is you can create, in your one page, you can create multiple pages. So I can create a hint page. I can create a lot of different little pages just based on the one room. So it's also a little bit more professional looking. It kind of looks like a chart. And a disadvantage that I've found, it is a little bit more difficult to navigate, like I mentioned, and I couldn't easily get my images to work as well, my animated images. As far as Microsoft quizzes and forms, this works well with the Microsoft Note. This is where you can embed different types of questions that you want the students to answer. So that is a little bit about platforms. As far as materials to help you facilitate your rooms, you're going to want to have the resources for your content to refer to. So that's going to be your textbooks, workbooks, case studies on the topic. That's where I get a lot of good ideas. You're also going to want to have some NCLEX questions. These can help you with the questions that you insert into the room. I've also seen instructors do worksheets as well with the electronic room. So you would upload a worksheet and the students would have to print that out, work on it, and from that worksheet, they would have to insert the code to get you to the next room where another worksheet would be. So that's an option as well. What else? I also have a couple, Google Images. That's going to be your best friend with saving images, folders, or I'm sorry, images and animated pictures. And again, you're going to want to put them all in the folder that you created. So again, it keeps it organized. And if you need to change something, it's all in that folder. I've also used QR codes, which is a way to link students to other resources as well. So that's for the virtual escape room. Real briefly on the in-person, it's going to vary significantly on how extravagant this escape room is going to be. Are you going to be in the simulation lab working on skills? You'll need your simulation equipment, and is the student going to have to look for things on the mannequin? Or are you going to do it live in the classroom with a huge class? There you might want to consider locked boxes and a variety of riddles, deciphers, to allow students to get to the next clue. The in-person is a lot more time consuming in my experience than the virtual escape room. I also listed some kits that I found. I have not had personal experience with the kits, but it's something that I found to help implement the in-person escape rooms. All right, next slide.
Okay, so as far as some of like your basics for creating an escape room, if you've never been to an escape room before, period, then you should totally go do one so you get an idea of that, or watch a video on YouTube since we're isolated, and kind of get a feel for you know, what makes up kind of the clues and the story and the background, so that then you can utilize it. And then you want to go ahead and apply that to whatever you're doing in your coursework. So I always say you want to map out your objectives and your story first, and that really saves you a lot of time and headache, because sometimes, you know, if you're trying to do everything at the same time and then you're like, oh, I should give him this history of this, and you go back and add something, but maybe you forgot to adjust it, you know, it can create a headache then when no one can get out. So always kind of map out your objectives and your story first. You know, what is it that you want to accomplish by having them do an escape room? And then as far as, you know, if you're just starting out, like when I just started out, I used just case studies that I had, you know, that we were actively using in class anyway. So I tried to you know, just kind of merge that over into a Google form while I got the hang of it. And, you know, maybe I changed the name, I did, you know, use some funny GIFs, those types of things. And then the story part and the question part were built out a little bit for me so that I could actually learn to maneuver whatever platform you're using. And for me, I mainly been working in Google Docs. So then based on your story and your clues and your objectives, that you're trying to meet, that's when you go ahead and you pick, you know, the platform that you're going to use, and you're going to, you know, map out just each room. And then that's where you get a little more specific and shift over to the escape room part. Do you want them to go 3 or 4 rooms? You know, how big do you want this code to be? Especially within nursing, we could ask a ton of questions on a specific content, and then they have to come up with like a 10-digit code. So that can be kind of overwhelming. So that may be something where you want to break them up into different rooms. So once you map out your story and your objectives, then you kind of focus on the room and how big you want it to be, so that you can manipulate it within, you know, Google or Microsoft, if that's what you're using. Always, always, always use your resources. So that, by that I mean, like, you know, go back to the textbook and again, what are the textbook that you're using, what are the lab values. Within the cool thing within these escape rooms, you can then embed additional, not just, you know, funny pictures, but you can embed videos and additional information. So for example, I used to house a ton of supplemental material on ABGs. And I was able to kind of build that into my escape room to where they went through tic-tac-toes, and then they went through, you know, the roam method. And I actually embedded those videos so that they can watch it and immediately respond to questions to get out of the room. And that kind of helped to reinforce then the learning and the understanding of. So, you know, utilize your resources such as textbook kind of material, but also, you know, if you're going to use a YouTube video, if you're going to use a specific diagram, something like that, you can embed it within the escape room and refer to it or ask questions, build off of it. And of course, make it fun. And just to echo what Lauren has already said, you know, Google Images is going to be your friend. And so it kind of makes them, you know, with funny images or GIFs. I did a whole escape room once with just Scrub, the TV show Scrubs, and their GIFs throughout the whole thing, just to kind of, because it was medical related, you know, it kind of gives people the idea that, okay, this is fun and this is able to relax, and, you know, learning can actually occur as opposed to like super stressed. If you've ever worked with a student in an actual like simulation experience, they suddenly become like super stressed and they're walking around, and then, you know, so this kind of helps. That's your way to kind of translate, you know, hey, this is a fun environment. So definitely, like I said, have everything written out ahead of time. Just determine how you want your escape room to look like, or how big, what you want it to look like, and then you can start to build it out. My last and most important thing is that you should always have someone not just proofread, but then try to escape your escape room. So that's where having that mentor, that colleague, even your significant other, if they have nothing medical related, that's fine. You know, depends on their background, but always have someone actually look at it and try to escape, because, you know, especially in your own mind, you know what you want it to do. You know, you've changed it so many times that you've gone back and forth. There's nothing worse than getting, and because I've done it, a ton of emails then from your students where they're like, I can't get out. So always have someone proofread for you, and then actually try to escape the room too. Colleagues are really good for that one. All right, that's all I have. So as far as implementing your escape room, we've already said this here and there, but it depends on, you know, what you have access to and what your objectives are, like that, you know, how you're going to implement it. So right now, I think a lot of us are stuck at home, and so virtual is probably the way to go. But obviously, if you can do this live and in class, again, to echo Lauren, you may want to use the previous presenters. You may want to use lockboxes. You may have them in different parts of the, you know, the building to kind of implement that sort of thing. So, and then you can go ahead and determine, again, what you're trying to do. I use a lot to reinforce lesson learning and understanding. So again, introducing a new topic like I said before, like with ABGs, and then having that additional information that they then had to work through and answer. But then you can also use it to have them practically apply skills. And so, for example, that's like where you may have built off your case study, either one that you've been using, or if you write your own, you may have where it's more focused on patient care and nursing responses and interventions. And so it provides them the opportunity to practically apply those skills or interventions to the patient. As far as you can use it also in simulation, again, reinforcing pre and post work in simulation. So again, my experience has been from a pre-work perspective, depending on, it could be set up for your simulation so that not only are they working through the patient a little bit and getting the background, they're working on, you know, reinforcing whatever skill or concept is associated with that. So I know that we've worked with it from a perioperative perspective, where then the simulation itself was actually hip fracture and blood transfusion, but we used the escape room to bring the students through from when the patient fell and got the hip fracture, was in the OR, and then post-operative. So you can use that to build out your patient, but you can also use that to reinforce or connect it to a concept in the simulation itself. These can also be used at clinical extension, maybe related to if you're giving your clinicals some type of purpose, and a lot of us are using accessing clinicals virtually now. So we have a little more flexibility in actually designing the day. And so if this is, maybe I gave them patients and virtual simulations related to that specific disease process, and then now I want to build out, and the last thing is give them, you know, an escape room to kind of reinforce all those different things that they went through. And who doesn't love a good exam review? Again, that just goes back to reinforcing learning. And I can see that in multiple aspects. Each room is maybe a different concept or exemplar that related to what is actually on the exam, or if you're focusing on one specific and it's got a lot of integral pieces, or for example, like diabetes, and you want to focus on not just what it is, but glucose monitoring and insulin administration, you can build out your rooms that way. So really great tool to kind of help reinforce learning and bring it all together and review just in time for an exam as well. Next slide.
Okay, so one of the things that people have asked is then how do you grade or evaluate students based on the escape room? And the other presenters have already addressed some of this. One of the things is you really want to start with, what are your objectives of the room? What is your purpose? Is your purpose to reinforce learning? Are you looking for mastery or a pass-fail kind of thing? Are you replacing a graded assignment? What is your plan? The first time that I used escape room was an in-person escape room. And honestly, I have teenagers, and that's how I heard about escape rooms, because they're an adventure activity. Now that, you know, the birthday parties for teenagers are at escape rooms when it's not a pandemic. And so that's how I heard about escape rooms, and they help provide experiential learning for the students. Because I have done a lot of sim, oftentimes what students have said to me is, I wish I had a chance to do the sim again after I got your feedback. So that's how we introduced escape rooms, is we had done a chest pain simulation on chest pain, and then we kind of dropped them in to the middle of the scenario. They've already had 2 nitro, and here's what we're going to do. But again, our purpose was to really reinforce the learning in a fun, engaging way. So for the electronic escape rooms, I think most of us have now used Google Forms, and I've seen that in the chat. There are a few questions about Google Forms. Really, you set up a free Gmail account, and then you create the Google form. Someone in the Facebook group posted directions, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who, of how to set it up as an escape room. And there are other things out there, especially now that we've all gone online, because my next hope with the escape room is to do a create your own adventure kind of escape room. But I'm not there yet. And so with setting up Google Forms, there are add-ins, and that's what I did for mine. So I did an add-in, and then you can see a copy on the screen here of a certificate. So basically, through each room, they have to answer questions and it's the number associated with that question that becomes the code to unlock the next room. So it's the correct answer. And that's when they get stuck, is when they aren't quite getting the right answers. So from that point, they put in their correct answers, and that allows them to enter the next room. With that, what I set up is that they had to get 80%, and then it would generate a certificate for them. My purpose was, again, it was a pass-fail, and it was really just a pass. You have to escape the room because it was a pre-work activity. But can you set up your escape room to meet evaluative criteria? So let's say you wanted to use it as a simulation replacement. Maybe you set up your escape room for, right now they're set up as individual activities, and I haven't explored, could it be a team activity like a regular escape room would be? But can they somehow demonstrate concept mastery or objective mastery, like communication or safety or teamwork? Is that a possibility? Can they do that? Once you set this up in Google Docs or Google Forms, then that generates a response sheet for you. Can we go to the next slide? And so when you pull up your escape room, you can actually get your results to come out as a spreadsheet. Now, this is just a snippet of the spreadsheet, and I hid the students' names and emails. But you can see that you get when they did it, what their score was, were they right or wrong, and then the spreadsheet goes on because this escape room is a little bit long. So, but it will actually generate what they put in for the code, everything that they did along the path. So you do actually have a way of going back and marking it as a grade if that's what you choose to do. Okay, next slide.
So I think as far as examples and resources, we've all shared some examples here in the PowerPoint, and I know within the Facebook group they've gone around in terms of building off of various escape rooms. I believe we talked about this earlier, and so forgive me if I don't remember, but they are all Google based. I know personally I had not explored with OneNote yet. So I believe they're all Google based, but depending on the topic, as you can see, I mean, we go rheumatoid, we look at ABGs, there's some OB ones, perioperative, code ones, diabetes, inflammatory bowels, fluid and electrolytes. So you really can vary the topics. And again, it just meets the criteria. What are you looking for the students to get out of? And so that kind of goes back to, you know, one of your first steps. Are you looking for more active participation rather than just handing them the case study? Or are you looking to see what they're really missing about a particular disease process? And again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm a big proponent of don't reinvent the wheel. So if you've already got stuff that's working, my fluid and electrolyte escape room was based on an amazing race that I did, but the amazing race always fell flat because lack of participation from staff, that I needed people to hand out clues and to be available when the students went from room to room. So this kind of worked out to switch that over. I know as far as resources go, we've again linked literature to show this up and coming type of active learning strategy, and how one of the articles talks about different resources and goes over tips and tricks again for utilizing it. One talks about, how it helps, escape some of those, no pun intended, generational gaps, and looking at it as a tool in simulation as well. Below, we've also linked to some of the how-to guides and like YouTube videos for, I know, some more tedious aspects, like if you're new to Google, and you're new to Google Forms, Google Docs, you know, that was one of the biggest things that I struggled with. And I don't know why I didn't think to just Google, but struggling with creating that lock because I couldn't get past it, kept giving them the answer, and then I finally figured it out. So there's helpful little YouTube video for how to create the locks. Again, more helpful resources and resources, and it should be linked. It should be linked when you open up the PowerPoint later. One of the cool things, again, when you utilize this, again, you can just Google and you'll find all sorts of information on escape rooms. I noticed a lot of it pertaining to maybe more K through 12 or younger education, but it doesn't mean you can't use it. I mean, you'll just use you'll apply different content. And so as you go through and start to look up different things, tons of information can be found on the internet, and then, you know, just utilize what you have. I believe this is the last slide. Yup. So
awesome. Great. Well, so again, this is Amber, and actually, can we go back to the last slide, Denise? Thank you. So at this time, obviously, we want to give a million thank yous to the panelists for all their hard work on this presentation. So at this time, I will moderate the questions. There's a number of questions here in the chat room. So I'm going to just kind of go down the list here, and then panelists, just feel free to jump in and answer as you see that you would be able to contribute. So one of the first questions I have here is, are students able to compete in groups in the virtual environment so that they can complete it together? And that's from Fiona. So again, are students able to complete in groups in the virtual environment so that they can work on it like as a group project?
I haven't figured out how to make that happen. I don't know if anybody else has.
Well, I know when I first set up, and I always have students like enter their name and email. So, you know, from that standpoint, you can just simply have them list all the people in the group. Logistically though, like right now in the situation we're in where they can't all be together, they're, you know, having them access it all at the same time, that part I haven't figured out. But as a classroom activity, I mean, there's no reason why, as long as one of them has a computer, if you have them all kind of working together in different parts of the classroom, and just have them just on your first page, you can have them enter in their entire team's name.
I've had students work together in a group similar to what we're using now, a platform. We have Blackboard, and so they have Blackboard Collaborate. And so what would happen is I'm able to make anyone who logs into Collaborate a moderator. And so I would make one of them a moderator, and so they could share the screen and just essentially go through it together that way. So I did have my students utilize the Zoom, or in my case, it was Blackboard Collaborate. And so they were able to go through the screens through screen share.
Okay, great. Next question is, do you make the escape rooms mandatory or have them as extra optional learning strategies?
The one I used was to enhance their clinicals and to reinforce the material. So it was mandatory, and I had them go through it and take screenshots to show that they had done it. I didn't use the response. I'm still working on some of that stuff. So I did have it mandatory for them to do. And like I said before, the feedback I got was very positive. There were a couple of them were frustrated because I couldn't get the answers right away. They wanted me to post the answers, but the ones that went through it a couple times loved it because they said they will never forget any of the stuff about diabetes that they learned by looking at that and doing that activity.
Awesome. I do want to put it out there to the panelists. There's multiple requests for you to show an escape room. So I don't know if you guys wanted to start working on that, and I can go to another question while you get that set up. The next question is that, what do you do for people with accommodations with escape rooms? How do you do an escape room for those students with accommodations?
Like which kind of accommodations? Like they need more time, or I know with, I saw in Microsoft Note that it allowed the stuff that I typed in, it would read that to them. And so that was already kind of pre-built in there. So that would meet some accommodations, again, depending on what those accommodations were. I didn't see that option in Google Forms, but it was there for Microsoft Note.
And I would think if they have some kind of a screen reader, because they need that, that would probably work in Microsoft, in Google Forms. But mine aren't time limited. So if it was an extra time thing, then that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I've never utilized this with a time frame on it. Again, more to help build that confidence and use it as a fun activity.
Same here.
So it appears that they did pull up the escape room. So I know that that's Jen, so maybe she wants to talk about it a little bit.
Okay, yeah, so this is my virtual escape room, ABGs. And so this is like the first page when they log on, and I saw some questions about, do the students need Google accounts or anything like that? Google account. And full disclosure, this is my husband's Google account. I just have a whole folder for escape rooms for my students. And then I create a shareable link, and then I post that for my students. And so when they first, I always greet them with like some type of picture or something, and I ask who you are. And in this case, I added this particular one on to clinical. So I said clinical credit can't be given unless I know who you are. It's just like that. And then, are you ready? Yes or no? And then, either way, what they say will get them into the next room. That's the beauty of that first part.
You're nice. I send them to another page that says, really?
Come on.
I know.
The cool thing is that I can always see their responses. So I have to say that this last group that just did this one, only 2 people said no, that they were not ready. Everybody else was like, yeah. So that's good. They are required questions on this particular page because, again, I needed to know that they did it, and I needed to avoid that. No, I did it. Here's my picture of my screen. That could have been anybody. So within these formats, these platforms, you can require questions and not require. When you go to do the code, it needs to be required, or else they can just move through without actually accomplishing anything. And then you can require what you need to require. So for me, I needed their name in this case. So I required the first page. So they could put whatever in there, and then hopefully they're nurses. They're coming out as nurses. Hopefully they gave me their real full name. And then you would just enter that and hit next.
In order, yeah, there we go, Denise, you're gonna have to.
Yeah. All right, and so then I always start them off with instructions and what they need. And I did not find, I have to say, once I met Lauren and I saw her cool image down below where it says caution, read the instructions first, I was like, that's it, that's my new escape room, because they need to read the instructions and they know what's going to happen. But it basically says, you're a nurse, you're in the hospital, you're going to be taking care of these patients, you're going to go from room to room. And it talks about how the correlating number will be in front of the answer, and then that's the number that they will be using. And then I always give them practice questions. So if we scroll down a little bit, and they're very simple questions. They are literally like, pick me, don't pick me. Pick me, don't pick me. But you see that there's like a 1 next to pick me, and all the others, 2, 3, 4, say don't pick me. So the student can click 1, and that would be the first number in their code. And then on question 2, 1 and 2 and 4 say don't pick me. You're going to pick 3. So then the next number in their code is 3, and then 2, and then instructions down here for how am I going to enter the number. So now you're going to go back to those numbers that were in the questions, and it should be 1, 3, 2. And then when they enter it and they hit next, it takes them to the next one. And so here I set the scenario up first. And so what happens is with this particular escape room, I make them go through like their entire shift. So they have different patients, but here they are, they're just starting off, and the educator, we all know how the educator chases you down at shift change, and they're like, sorry, you haven't finished your competencies. You're going to need to go ahead and do these competencies. And here's where then I introduced tic-tac-toe and the Rome method for analyzing ABGs. And this works because honestly, I can't tic-tac-toe to save my life. I do the Rome method. So, but for my students who can't do Rome and they prefer the tic-tac-toe, here it is. And so I provide them with a picture, and then underneath I embedded them with a video that they can watch. And then I gave them ABGs and I asked them to interpret it. And here's where you want to make sure you utilize the resources that you have and make sure everything aligns. So we switched over to textbooks. And one of the things when I started teaching is the HCO3 is value is a little bit different in the new textbook than what I was used to teaching. And so I think I went through the whole first lecture saying the wrong value than what was in their resource. So you want to make sure, you know, that what they have to refer to, since this is a learning activity, does match. And so, yeah, so then they would go through and answer and pick their answers. And if you want to scroll down to the bottom, you can, there's the Rome method then. And we can keep going. I know it's a long one. And then there's where, okay, so now in order to get through this, you have to enter the code. And so what we'll do is we'll enter the wrong code so you can see what happens. So if you just want to pick, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's not the code. I don't know where the code is right now, sorry. Oops, try again. And so there you go. You can actually edit and create your own, like, you can say nice try or almost, so close. But one of the things that frustrated, and to echo Kimberly, students would get really frustrated in that they didn't know which one was wrong. And there's really no way that I have found to bring them back specifically to the one that's wrong. But in a way, I mean, that's good. It's not my job to drive students nuts, but at least they go back and it really causes them to evaluate and go through, you know, some information. And then if they need to, I throw them a lifeline. So that was one of the frustrating points. So this is where I do recommend that you do have, you do take time to go over them, what the correct answers are with the students and why, because there, you know, there's no rationales or anything set up. And then they basically just move through. Once they finish their competencies, they go to the ER and they have someone who's having issues, and then they follow that patient up to the floor. And by the way, they have a new nurse that comes and asks them some questions too. And it's all about interpreting, and then they finish. So just to give you an example of what one looks like.
Yes, we actually have a lot of requests. People want a part 2 where you show them how to make one of these. So put that on your list of things to consider, panelists. I have another question here. Any good tips for select all that apply questions?
Oh yeah, you can easily do select all that apply. Just if you scroll up on that image of, oh no, it's gone. But anyway, there's an option when you're entering questions. It'll say multiple choice, or I think multiple choice or multiple response. So when you're entering your questions, and so the students will be able to select multiple answers to that question. And in addition, you are numbering your answers. So for example, if you had 6 answers, the first answer is going to be in parentheses 1, the second one parentheses 2. And so they can check that part of the code could be for the first one, you know, answers 1, 4, and 6 were correct for that select all that apply. And then they would just continue with the rest of the questions. It depends on how many questions you have, but there is an option in Google Forms when you're entering a question, how you want your responses to look. So it could be a little circle like we saw with that example, or if you select the multiple responses, it'll come up like a little check mark where students are used to seeing, you know, circle means one answer, check mark means multiple answers. So there's definitely a way.
So I also wanted something out there that both Jen and Lauren have said it, is that one of the things when I was first creating it is you actually have to number your questions because it doesn't come up as A, B, C, D. You have to put A, B, C, D, or you have to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is you want them to use for the code at the bottom, because it's not auto-generated by the Google form. The other thing is you can't actually do a MedCalc in there and have a numeric answer be part of their code.
And I would just say that, again, there are tons of different things. You can have true, false in there. You just need to make sure you correlate whether it's numbers or letters. And I would be thrilled and absolutely happy to show everyone how to make one. It was definitely trial and error. You can ask my husband. I was in here for a long time, like, I've got to figure this out. But at the same time, you can easily Google it and find tons of YouTube videos. And again, not trying to downplay, I would love to show everybody. But don't feel like you have to wait around for me or any of us to do that, because if you go on right now and go on YouTube, there's tons of people who can absolutely show you and walk you through whatever platform you're comfortable with using.
Also, on this slide that you're looking at on the how-to, the last link at the bottom on the right, the handout I created, and so it kind of walks you through each option in creating a question. So definitely, once this is done, click on that link. It's a document that has some words and has some visuals of what you're going to see when you open up your Google Doc, or I'm sorry, your Google form. And, you know, I have highlighted, you know, this is important, make sure you check this. So check out that handout as well.
Great, we have a few more questions. I don't think we're gonna get to all of them. We'll try. Okay, somebody asked, Jenny Peters says, you mentioned if the student clicks nah, never mind, it will direct them to a different page. Can you explain how that's done?
Yeah, so with each question, when you are, like, for example, when you enter a question, on the right-hand side, it will ask you what you want to do with that question, how you want the student to progress forward. So for that example, on my page, that very first page, where it says, yes, continue. So on that question, if they selected yes, continue, I allowed them to go to the next part. If they said no, then I created another page in my Google Doc or Google form that said, and I put like an image on there, like, are you serious? So that's how they would get to that page. So as soon as you as soon as you add a question, you can tell Google Forms what you want to do with that question.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here. Have any of you used or applied your standardized evaluation instruments to evaluate sim clinical experiences to your escape rooms? That's kind of a long one, but have you used any standardized evaluation tools for this escape rooms?
So I will say that I did. And the one that I have on there, that's the Chest Pain Code Blue escape room. All of the students in the one course had actually already participated in the live sim before the, all the shutdowns. And so, but I had 3 students that we had already made arrangements for their makeup, and I had to figure out how was I going to make the makeup happen without actually being able to be in there and doing the Code Blue. And so I created the escape room, and so it goes through the chest pain protocol, and they go through all that story, and then it goes through the Code Blue and what happens in the Code Blue, and what, when you're going to do CPR and when you're going to defibrillate and all of that stuff. And then it actually, we end up, the patient lives and we send her to PCI. And so I try to hit all the key points that I would have in sim, in-person sim. And then what I did for those students is then I reflected on our standard evaluation tool where they met that criteria. We also, because it was a sim replacement, then some of that I reinforced when I debriefed with the 3 students. So it did work. The perioperative one I didn't set up like that, but I think it is doable.
Okay, we have a lot more questions. I'll try and pick the next best one here. So let's see. The next question is, Once completed, how do you share the escape room with the students?
Well, you can, I know within Google's, you right click, you get a shareable link. And then for me, I go back to the LMS. I work everything out of my, we utilize Canvas. So everything gets its own, like if it's a Dropbox or whatever the case may be. And I've posted the actual link in the instructions for them to go and visit. And then this way, there's not 100 like, Mrs. Reyes, where's that link again? Or what email was it? I can't find it. So that's just the nature of my students is what worked out better by giving it, going back to the LMS and giving it its own special non-movable place. And then I just share the link with them.
That's what I did too. It gives you options that you can email it or you can copy a link. And I did the same thing. We utilized Blackboard and I put it in as an assignment for the Blackboard, just same reasons so that everybody can see where it's at.
And because mine had that certificate associated with it, I put the link in there and then it became a Dropbox. So they had to, even though I can go back and look and see that they did it, but they had to upload their certificate into the Dropbox.
Okay, I have another question here. Do you build any breaks into the escape room? Do you build any breaks in there?
Like breaks? I mean, I don't know exactly what that question asked.
Like hints in there, or like they get a break?
Questions or?
If they get a break, that's a no for me, just because they can start it and leave it and they'll be on the same page. If they want to come back several hours later, it'll still come up. Google's very friendly in that way. If you're talking about breaks as far as hints, there's options, but like I said, Google Forms was a little bit harder to kind of build them in my opinion, because I can put a link in there that sends the student elsewhere, but I don't want them to go click on that right away and get all the hints. Like I want them to try it a couple times. So there's a way to, link something if they get stuck, but I'd be afraid that they're going to go right to that hints page and try to fly through it.
Yeah, I agree with Lauren there. And what I got were just emails and not very many. I'm stuck in this room. Can you please help me? And that's how we handled that.
I will say, just real quick, I've gotten a lot of feedback from the rooms that I've implemented, and typically I would do a room and it would progress to the next room, to the next room. What I've started to do with the rooms is after they've progressed out of that, they've unlocked the room, I've done like a review page, because I've got a lot of comments of, I wish I would have known what I got wrong. I was doing this, several times and I changed my answers several times. So I would want to know what I got wrong. So I went back, and these Google Forms are very easy editable. And so I just added another room after the locked room with a description of, essentially a rationale to the questions. And that's been helpful to people who get stuck, and they get stuck there for a while and they are just changing answers all around. And so they don't even know where they started. So that's a good option as well.
So Lauren, did you do that for every room, or did you do that just at the end?
No, I did it for every room. So because at the end of my escape rooms, I have a little comment box for, give me your comments. And so I had seen a lot of them like, oh man, I was stuck and I really wish I would have seen a rationale. And so I went back into the rooms and just edited them. So after they got out of the locked room, it went right to a rationale page. And then that page didn't have a lock on it. It just allowed them to go to the next room.
I think that's a great idea. But it all goes back to how you use it. So I didn't have any of the rooms because ultimately, like, I used to try and use these in-class activities. So my goal before all of this was to be right there and help them walk themselves through it, or walk them through it. Mm-hmm. So you could easily, but Google is super easy to use in that you can go back and then add that, because I got those comments. But I will say, for every comment that was like, this is so hard and I got stuck, there was probably another 3 or 4 that were like, I love this activity. So please don't be discouraged by the, oh my God, the naysayers who get stuck.
And the other thing in Google Forms is that you can, if you're setting it up as a quiz, which is how I set mine up, then you can actually have them, Google will give them what the right answers are after they go through it. The problem is it's like the hint page or the link right at the bottom, is then are they taking it seriously, or are they just going to click to see what the right answers are?
Well, oh my goodness, I had a feeling we were going to run out of time. We have so many questions still, and I think we'll just have to ask our presenters to consider to come back. But definitely want to say thank you to all of you, and a special congratulations to Lauren, who is graduating with her DNP in 2 weeks and made time out of her schedule to create this presentation. So can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So just a reminder, next Thursday at 4 p.m., same time, we're going to be doing a Picmonic review. I am looking for some faculty to kind of guide some questions here, because you know we value honest feedback and reviews. So we will have an expert in the product, but that's not the purpose. The point is for us as faculty to determine if it's something that would be useful for our students. And so if there's any faculty interested in kind of picking it apart, or if some of you know how to use it, that'd be great, just so we can learn more about it. We had a faculty member who really recommended it in the group. So thanks again. Don't forget to come check out the Facebook page and share with your colleagues. And thank you again to the panelists and Denise from WCTC. And this is Amber Gonzalez Grant saying, have a good night. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.